Okay, go ahead, go quick. We're gonna miss some stuff. All right, so, do you guys remember what we did that was really weird last week? No? It was something with the 10 Commandments. What did we do with the 10 Commandments that was so different? Yeah.
We did like the smallest numbers, and then we would go up. Like we start with like 3, and then we would go up.
Yeah, we did the odds. We did the odd numbers. Kai, can you give me my water, please? Thank you. Yeah. All right. So we did the odd numbers, but you know what? That's because we were ending with commandment number 10. And so today, or number 9, today we go on to commandment number 10. Do you guys realize that today we get to the last commandment? So we got through all of them so far this year. Isn't that exciting? All right. So let's see how well we can do it with the evens today. Right? So number 1 or 2. What's number 2? Zeke.
You shall not take God's name in vain.
You shall not take God's name in vain. All right? Good job. What about number 4?
You shall honor the Sabbath day and keep it.
No.
You honor your father and mother.
That's right. Honor your father and your mother. That one's number 3 that you were starting to say. Yep. Honor your father and your mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. Very good. Zeke? You have your hand up.
I was thinking about that one.
Okay, go ahead.
You shall honor your father.
Yeah, that's the one that Kaya just said.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I was like, when I saw it.
Okay. So the next one, number 6. You shall not.
Commit adultery.
That's right. We has 2 blanks there, so we know it's committed adultery. Great job, Kaya girl. So that leads us to number 8. Zeke? You shall not lie or bear false witness against your neighbor. And because we were just learning number 9, I still had that one up there. Number 9 is what? You shall not...
Not covet your neighbor's house.
That's right. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. So we talked last week about what that word covet means, right? You guys remember what it means? What does it mean, Kaya?
It means, oh, I want that.
Yeah, to like want so bad that you like would kind of do things to get it, or that it makes you discontent with what you have.
Like I want a Lego set that's like over my budget.
I heard that you like had one over your budget, but you still got it anyways because it was on sale that day, huh?
Well, yeah, that was for Christmas, but no, there's another one.
No, there's not. Which one is it now?
Obviously, $100. It's like a water park with like friends.
Wow.
$100.
Yeah, those.
It's $99, but it's close to $100.
Yep.
So,
Those get pricey. All right, and that gets us to number 10, which is going to look pretty similar to number 9. But number 10 is, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, or anything that belongs to your neighbor, or that is your neighbor's. So that's a great question. What's a maidservant or a manservant, right? Well, we have to remember that when God was giving these commands, they were living in a different time, right? But we think about servants in houses sometimes, like you might have a maid, right? What does a maid do?
They like
Changes the bed. Cleans the house.
Yeah, kind of cleans, changes the bed maybe. And that's a service that some people will afford and pay for. Well, a manservant would be a boy who kind of helps out around the house. And then a maidservant would be kind of a woman who helps around the house. This is just saying like you should not want for yourself your neighbor's guy who helps around or his girl who helps around. And then what is a cattle?
like sheep,
A sheep?
cows.
Okay, yeah. So sheep, donkey, cows, it's like livestock. Mostly often referred to as cows and stuff like that. So that's cattle. So we shouldn't want our neighbors, and we don't, like, how many of you have neighbors with cows? Not you? Not you? Well, what is this? Like, do we have to worry about this commandment then, since our neighbors don't have cows?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Why do we, Kaya?
We need to, well, it's still, we still shouldn't want what others have.
That's right. We still shouldn't want what others have. And this is talking about not so much cows specifically, but we would say that this is also talking about their possessions, right? So we talked about their house first, their establishment, and it's also not just like the building they live in, but it's also like their lineage and their inheritance. And this one's talking about their present belongings. So cattle, we could say our neighbor's car, or we could say our neighbor's yard or tree swing or snowman or whatever they might have. And when we get older, guess what? This is the same thing, where we say, I shouldn't covet my neighbor's car. I shouldn't covet my neighbor's sprinkler system. You guys are like, wow, you covet weird things. And anything that is your neighbor's. So God is telling us here again, just like we were talking about last week, he wants us to be, it's a big C word. What should we be?
Content.
That's right. We are to be content. And why should we be content? Because he gives us everything we need and what is best for us. And that's really important because sometimes we might not think what is best. Well, I've got a surprise for you. Oh, okay, I didn't put a blank slide in there. We are going to sing a song that we haven't done for a long time. And this song requires props that I'm going to have to go and get. Okay?
Do you need to get something?
That's okay. You got the baby. But it has to do something with God and how big he is.
God is so big.
Not quite that, but he's so big he can hold stuff.
He's got. Oh no.
What are some things that God can hold?
The world.
He can hold the whole world. Where?
No.
In his. He's got.
In his hands. Here we go. Here's a world. Here's a world. And here's a world. And here's a world.
I love these balls.
All right, do we have a ball for everybody? There's a world. All right, take that one, Jaira. Zeke, do you have a world?
Yep.
All right. So here we go. He's got the whole world. And then, as you're doing it, you can play with your world. And also, when we're done with this, then we'll put the offering away because I'm sure it'd be hard to put the offering away while you're playing with the world.
Well, yeah, because then you would like actually bump the ball.
Yeah, you could. You could give the world as an offering. The whole world. All right? Are you guys ready? He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got your mamas and your papas in his hands. He's got your mamas and your papas. I want to hear you. In his hands, he's got your mamas and your papas. In his hand, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got your brothers and your sisters. In his hands, he's got your brothers and your sisters. In his hands, he's got your brothers and your sisters. In his hands, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got your uncles and your aunties. In his hand, he's got your uncles and your aunties. In his hand, he's got your uncles and your aunties. In his hands, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got your grandmas and your grandpas. In his hands, he's got your grandmas and your grandpas. In his hand, he's got your grandmas and your grandpas. In his hands, he's got the whole world in his hands. Itty bitty babies! He's got the itty bitty babies. In his hands, he's got the itty bitty babies. In his hands, he's got the itty bitty babies. In his hands, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. Put him in the basket. Thanks, guys. Oh, that was really close, Anna.
Very close.
We know she's better at marshmallows than air balls. She just likes to think about throwing sheep.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So if you guys have some coins for the offering, you can go ahead and put those in there.
But my mom has them, and I was saying my grandpa.
Okay.
Jack,
All right.
leave them in.
So we're going to go on to our memory verse now. And do you want to know what? I did something special for our memory verse. We're going to do something a little bit different. I made a memory verse puzzle.
Ooh, I love puzzles.
All right? So here's what the puzzles are going to be like. Oh, that was anticlimactic. We're going to be playing with gold today.
Those are Jenga blocks.
Yes, they are, but they're gold Jenga blocks. Now, you will see that there's lightly written on some words. So what you need to do is, and look, there's words on these sides, and there's not any elsewhere, and there's words on some of these going this way. So your job is to build a tower with the memory verse in order.
So you need to
So you're gonna try to start at the bottom, and you're going to need to work as a team, which means don't just grab. And this table, if you're gonna be bumping the table, guys, oh, there we go. It might make it a little bit harder, okay? So I'll put can anybody say the verse? It came up in our Bible, or in our sermon for today. James 1.
5.
If any lacks wisdom, ask God, who gives not quite without generations.
Without finding and
Will. Okay, so here we go. There it is for your reference.
so do they need to build from the top up, or like the bottom is the end of the memory verse, or are you reading from bottom to top?
I have the top of the verse, like James is on the bottom, but like I have the words going from top to bottom. So maybe what you might want to do is you might want to like lay it out this way and then build.
Yeah, so try to figure out which. You gotta find the
Okay,
word.
so Jerry, you're gonna have to,
Oh, there we go.
yeah, and I did have to cross one or two out because I realized later that I used the wrong part. Like, yeah, I used the wrong words. So it's not all gonna be in one line too. So let's start. Let's try to find the first line of up here, okay? James except is gonna be on the bottom and the number.
If we can find
So
it even.
what are the first words of the memory verse?
James 7. Well, the verse would be James.
In the quotations.
There
You,
is James. Yeah, there should be.
I found the numbers and look at here's James.
So that's James.
okay, and I'll give you a tip too. You're gonna wanna stack it so that the words are up. So, yeah, and then you can like build up with that. Okay? Kind of, except we have the words. So there's any, fault, all.
Here's if.
Okay?
But if.
Yes, yep.
What's the next word?
Any.
Good.
So,
Here's any.
any.
No, that's not.
Yeah, we have to
You gotta
keep
all
them there.
work together.
You
okay?
can play with these a little bit later, honey, okay?
Yep, that's right.
I'm adding
That's will. Okay, so we're gonna have to put them together, all right? So where's if?
Yeah. No, it's off.
Well, if any of you.
any.
Okay, and then James is on the bottom there, so we're gonna keep those separate. Let's line it up here. If any.
Of
Where's of?
you fault.
Okay, if you can't find it, you gotta maybe move the blocks around a little bit. And Zeke, if they're not the ones you're touching, then you might have to touch other ones.
Wait, this isn't empty? Oh no.
What's on that one? 2.
Do something, and then this one has and.
Okay.
Not looking for 2 though. We're looking for which is obviously
Oh, you had of was right here. If any of
You. So we need
you
you.
lacks
Which is starts with an add. Lacks
wisdom.
Which starts with a W, obviously.
There you go. There's wisdom. Oh, that's without. Okay.
Wisdom and then you again. So it's wisdom and you.
Well, that's fault and that's all. You actually have to read them. They can't just be what you want them to be. That's not Genesis. We don't have a Genesis. You did. Good job.
Job, Rhea.
Okay, wisdom.
You again.
If any of you lacks wisdom.
You.
Okay, let's go down here. You.
You should ask God.
I've got to ask and God, but I
Okay. We look for should.
So what?
That's will.
S-H, should.
S-U.
S-H-O-U.
Okay. No, I don't think that is.
Should. One of them should say should.
I gotta make sure I didn't get any stuck in my blanket, because that would be kind of sad for you.
Oh, yeah, no, you can't.
Okay, none in the blanket.
So should.
And none in there, so you should have them all. Ha!
Yeah, we have them all.
Okay, you gotta find the one that says should.
Yes.
2. Okay, let's look in your hands. Will.
Without you.
Okay, all fault generously. What's this one? 2. And you have which ones? Without. Well, let Daddy check his office really quick to see if he left one behind. I don't think I did, but. Hi, Daddy.
There we go.
So skip past the should then and keep doing the other ones.
What would be next?
So good.
Ask God.
Yes.
Who?
We need who.
W-H-O people. Oh, here.
Generously.
Yeah.
You've got generously.
Generously. To all.
To
All.
No, stay here, please.
all.
This does right there. It's very faint. It says two.
Generation.
You want me to go look in the van?
No, because I wrote them here.
No, they need to stay there, Jerry. We're making them loose.
So if we don't have should, how can we make the whole verse?
Well, I'll give you a grace period then.
All right.
Okay?
So we got the other part.
Ask God.
To all.
Generation. To all.
Oh, Gyro, one's on the floor.
To all without.
Yeah, that just fell though. I was thought.
That's okay. Here's should.
Oh,
Look at that!
it was invisible.
Just needed a mom.
Mom's eyes are magic.
Generously
To all.
generation.
No,
To all without.
without, not generations. All generations was a different one.
Finding.
Set yours down because then we can read it better.
There we go. Finding.
Finding.
Finding. And then we have fault.
Jared, can I check on that?
No, that's two.
Yep, Gyro, put yours up there. They need to see it, please. Gyro, that's okay. They still need to. Still need to see it.
It will.
Rare.
Okay, don't just take.
That's right. Will be given to you.
We have a two here.
To be.
Okay, they need it, Gyro.
Can you give it to Anna or Lee? Say that's two. Where? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had a
You. That's it. That's it.
All right, so now can you turn that into a tower?
How are you gonna be able to do that?
This would go first, James would go first. So now should you go like this?
Oh, there we go.
And you flip them like that and then stack those on top.
Except for those ones because those ones
Except we
have.
might need to make it an even
Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah.
foundation.
Give it.
I can't reach. How can we do this one?
Wait, give it. It's on that side.
Yeah,
We need to make
We can't.
that's okay. You know what? How about we'll say that you guys did the verse good.
Hey,
Good.
Otherwise, we'll be here. So, yep, good job. You guys can have a
You
seat.
can make a tower out of it at home.
Okay, have a seat, please.
I just don't know how to.
Thank you, guys.
You guys did good with the verse.
You did.
It was not short until you found it. Just like magic.
Just needed those mom eyes.
Yep, those mom eyes. They're fancy. All right.
Oh.
And now, after we're done with the verse, it's time for Guess the Story. Guess the Story. And guess what we're doing for Guess the Story today?
I don't know, something with coconut flakes?
Building a tower.
We're going to use this. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, okay? So once upon a time, there was a man. And this man, he had a dream. He wanted to do something that would be really nice and really great for his God. And this man was someone that God loved, and he loved God. But even though this was the case, God said, you know what? I'm not going to have you build me my home, but someone further down in your family will. And sure enough, there was a person who came after that was the son of this man, and he too wanted to build a really nice building. And instead of being told no, he was told, go right ahead. And so he went into the land and he collected all sorts of good things like gold earrings and gold rings. And he sent thousands of people to go to other places to chop down special trees and to carve these trees up and to also carve stones. And they would turn these stones into beautiful square or rectangle blocks. And these blocks were used to stack one on top of the other. And that led to something that was beautiful and marvelous, that was a wonder for all the world to see. And they kept building until it was done. And when it was done, they had for themselves a very special place that was covered with gold and full of glory. Can anybody tell me what lesson we're going to talk about today? What story?
David.
Nope.
Solomon building the temple.
That's right. We're talking about Solomon building the temple. Okay? And so these gold blocks are kind of a reminder to us of what Solomon used to build the temple. And here's something that's pretty amazing. Do you know what the temple looked like? Well, we don't have a picture of it, but we do know is that it was about 3 stories tall, maybe a little bit taller, because they measured in different things. They don't go stories, they used cubits. But we know that there were 3 levels to this building, and we know that it was made out of stone and of cypress wood, and that it was really, really beautiful because everything was covered with gold. Now, as we're talking about this special building that Solomon has built, the temple of God, as I say that, you guys might not be too impressed with that statement. Why? Why might you not be too impressed? Or are you really impressed? Okay, you are. Well, that's great. But here's why I'm thinking that we might be tempted to not be too impressed. Because we heard about what Daddy was saying, or what I was saying, and how many stories tall was it again? Who remembers? Kaya?
3.
Yeah, there's 3 floors to this building, and we think, well, that's really not all that great. I mean, there's this building, another place in the world called the Burj Khalifa, in a place that you and I have never been, the United Arab Emirates. But look at this building.
Wow, that's tall.
That is tall. That is the tallest building in the world.
Oh wow, it's taller than me.
And so how high do you think a 3-story building would be compared to that?
This small.
Pretty bitty? Yeah, see, these right here are tall skyscrapers.
Oh wow.
So those are tall skyscrapers. And then they're about to here. And so it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tall skyscrapers on top of each other. That's one impressive building. And so we look at this and we're like, there's these huge skyscrapers, and that's really huge. And then there's like this 3-story temple. That's really not all that exciting. But this morning, I'm going to read a few verses on describing what the temple was like and what it was made of. And while I'm reading this, here's what I want you to be thinking of. I want you to be thinking of how you might try to build this temple back in the day that these people built this temple, okay? Using the tools and the equipment they had at that time. So I'm going to read from 1 Kings chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. This is what it says. In the 480th year after the Israelites came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high, which is about 30 feet wide and, no, it's about 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet tall. So about 4 stories tall. All right. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple entered the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and the projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow windows high up in the temple walls. Against the walls of the main hall, the inner sanctuary, he built a structure around the building in which there were side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at a quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. So what do you think it means to dress stone? Do you think they just found really big clothes? Like, here's a sheet, now it's a toga. Ha! What do you think it means?
Cover it with gold.
Yeah, they had to carve these rocks. And did they carve it there? They had to carve it beforehand. So imagine how hard it would be to carve these stones beforehand and then to bring them there and to make sure that they would fit. Because you couldn't fix it there. Because it said that they didn't have any tools that were being heard at that place. That's pretty crazy, huh? And it took a long time to build this, too. Now, I told you, I wanted you to be thinking about how would you build the structure at this time. So, what can you come up with? What would you do to build this structure?
I can't.
You can't imagine that. Why not? What would be the problems or the challenges?
Nope.
Remember, we're not going that high into the sky where we need like a huge crane. We're just going up 4 stories.
I mean, like, when you're trying to make the rock fit, and you might have to chop up, if it doesn't fit, you wouldn't want to chop your carvings, so
Yeah.
you have to go do it all over again.
Yeah, that could be tough.
Do you think that those were light? Or do you think that they were pretty heavy?
How do you think they'd move them?
From an elevator.
From an elevator? They didn't have elevators. They had to use their hands. So here's an activity
Ladder.
that I was thinking you might have a little bit more people to help out with this, but here's what I want to do to kind of illustrate this, right? We're going to see how your ideas work. We're going to pretend that I'm a rock,
Oh.
and your goal is to get me not to the first floor, not to the second floor, but to the 3rd floor of this building. All right?
That's gonna be heavy.
So, I'm going to be this rock that's just kind of sitting here, and we'll see if you guys can get me to the 3rd level
Oh no.
of the building.
I'll try.
Do you need the microphone?
I need to have workman's comp before I do this. Oh, okay.
Need more help at the front!
Kaya, you're strong. Can you help with? Yeah, there you go.
All right. We just have 3 small levels to go. And they're just really short little
Take it
steps.
one at a time.
I need to tighten my belt. No, we're good. Oh, you guys are going to have to tell, like, Landon that he needed his help. Oh, we almost... Okay. We're making progress in the first step. All right. Heave the stone. Heave the stone. Carpet burn.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
How will we get you up, Daddy?
That's a good question. So as you guys are trying to get me up, no, don't pull my belt. Think about like what it would be like to be trying to haul the big stones.
They were grown men!
No, they weren't. Well, yeah, but I'm so much smaller than one of those big stones would be. Those would be thousands of pounds. All right, you guys can have a seat. You guys can have a seat.
Good job,
Nice try.
Jordan.
All right.
Izzy, give me your spot.
Ow. I'll give you a pop.
Did that give you a pop on the back? So.
Jordan is heavy.
Yeah, I'm heavy. Yep. All right. So that's kind of why it really is kind of an impressive thing that they made this building that was that tall, that was covered with gold, and they were lifting stones so high. That's pretty special to think of all the work that they went into that, right? Now, they probably would have had things like ramps. They might have tried to use things like logs that they could roll things on, and maybe some levers. They could have used those things, which you guys didn't have. But again, I'm a lot lighter than one of those big stones, so think about that, all right?
And woo, just a little kid.
And you are just little kids, but you have a lot of energy. So that works too. And there's a lot of you.
We chopped off an extra hour of sleep. That lessens my energy.
So that had that much less sleep for me to gain weight in my sleep. So there's that.
I don't
All right. Now, as we think about this, you can see why it took Solomon and his crew 7 years to build the temple, right? If they're having to do all that work, because it wasn't even just putting the stones up. They had to get the stones in the quarry, then they had to haul the stones and then put them in place, and they had to cut the boards, and then they had to cover everything with gold. And you know what? Those bricks that I had, how long do you think it took me to cover those in gold?
A few minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't really long. Do you know why?
Because you used spray paint.
Yeah, I cheated. It's not real gold. It's just paint colored to look like gold, and a little bit shiny too. I was actually happy with how shiny they looked, huh? So, do you think that they could use spray paint?
No.
What do you think they used?
Real gold.
Real gold. And how do you think they got the gold thin to like cover things with?
You probably took a mine down, maybe.
They had to hammer it out and flatten it so it was really thin, and then they could press it on and kind of hammer it on the design. So that would take a long time. I don't know if they'd pour it. It says hammered.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So here, that's Solomon, and he builds his temple in 7 years. And guess what happens at the end of that time?
Almost my whole life.
Yeah, your whole life. Guess what happens at the end of that time? Can you guess, Jared? No. Zeke, can you guess?
Solomon died.
No. What happened at the end of that time is that the temple was finished. And so Solomon was able to get everything ready. And he's like, wow, God's house is finally done. Look at how beautiful it is. Now, we kind of have moved a little bit away from that because we recognize that God doesn't live like just in this church, does he? So we live in a different reality of God's history of working with man. But this was the one place that God would be dwelling with his people. So if you live far away, you could take a trip, you could go to the temple, and you could know that God's presence would be there. And that was really, really important. And the temple was beautiful. And some of the old churches, you guys haven't really been to. Anna, have you ever been to a cathedral?
I actually don't know.
Okay. So there's some really old churches that are built of stone. They took a long time to build too. And they have like really tall, beautiful, ornate ceilings. And they might be covered with paintings. And like, if you think about Notre Dame, are you familiar with Notre Dame?
Remember that scene?
That's,
Yeah, it just burned down.
yeah, that's an example of a cathedral. And so there was a time in history where people would spend so much of their energy and money trying to make a beautiful house of worship like that. And they were trying to do that to honor God, right? But we know that God has now moved into our hearts, so we want to take care of our bodies. That's a good thing. But as Solomon was building this temple, do you know what he said? I thought this was really interesting. He knew that God was much too big to fit into his temple. So as he was building this, he basically said, okay, God, you're not going to be able, like, you can't fit in this temple, can you? You're not going to be limited here. But what he did say, even though he knew that God was so much bigger, he recognized that God wanted to be in this place, to be connecting with his people. And he said, would you hear from heaven and hear your people when they sin? Because he's like, we're going to screw up. We're going to mess it up. And I want you to hear from heaven to hear us and to be here. And so Solomon recognized that God was so big, he couldn't be stuck in a little building. Just like God is so big, he doesn't just stay in these walls. He doesn't just stay on the altar area of our church. And he doesn't just stay in your heart either. He's supposed to go out into the hearts of other people and to go from the walls of this church into the community around us. Okay? So, God was too big for the building, but Solomon prayed that God would take care of his people. And then when the building was finished, Solomon wanted to dedicate the temple to the Lord. And he started to do so, and he used a special prayer. And we're going to read this together on the screen, okay? So if you can read, I want you to read along with me. This is from 1 Kings chapter 8, and we're going to read verses 56 through 61, okay? So this is Solomon's prayer, and I want you to listen specifically for the true things he says about God in this prayer. You guys ready? Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in obedience to him, and keep the commands, decrees, and laws he gave to our ancestors. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God, day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servants and the cause of his people Israel, according to each day's need, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and there is no other. And may your hearts be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands as at this time. So that was Solomon's prayer. I love this prayer because it says so many good things about God in it. Now, what did you see about God from this prayer?
He never breaks his promises.
Yeah, God has not failed to fulfill any one of his good promises, right? So God is always faithful. If he says, hey, I'm going to do this, what do we know?
He's going to do it.
He's going to do it. Okay? What else did we see then?
He's going to crush Satan, and he is going to.
Yeah, he did promise that he was going to crush Satan, right? What other things do we see in that prayer specifically mentioned? Might be hard since you can't see it right now. Do you guys remember anything that we read? Okay, so here's some other things. He says that the Lord will never leave you or forsake you. What does that mean?
He will never go away from us, and he will never say, you're not good enough for me to live in your heart.
That's right. You know, sometimes in life, we end up having these feelings of being lonely, as if nobody likes us or cares about us, if nobody wants to be with us, right? And sometimes we can even feel like my mom and my dad, they don't like me, they hate me, they just want to make my life miserable, and we can feel left out. But God will never leave us, and he will never forsake us, okay? We also see that we can turn our hearts to him. God wants us to be with him, and that's awesome to think about. And we also see that we're to have a heart for the lost people that don't know Jesus. Because as we're talking about this verse, it says here that, so God is taking care of all of our needs. I think of the Lord's Prayer there. Annie, remembering the Lord's Prayer, the fourth petition where we say, give us our daily bread, right? So recognizing our need, but then so all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God and there is no other. So Solomon's praying, God, would we have a heart to make you known? And so that's our heart too, to tell others about Jesus. And then also, we see in the last verse here, we see that we're called to have our hearts be fully committed to the Lord our God and to obey him. So there's so much good things in that prayer. I just love that prayer, okay? And I want you to be paying attention to it because it might come back at another time, all right? Now, after Solomon finished with this prayer, do you know what they did in those days to dedicate something?
No.
They killed stuff. You guys remember a couple of weeks ago on Wednesday nights when we were talking about the sacrifices? And how many sacrifices there'd be, and like thinking of how much blood would be in front of the altar and stuff like that. There's a lot of sacrifices. Well, here is something for you guys to think about. Here we're seeing that God had, or Solomon then, once the temple was done, he finished his prayer, he decided to dedicate it through sacrifices. And do you know what he did? Guess how many animals he sacrificed? If you had to guess, how many would you say?
2,000.
Hundreds. 2,000. Wow. Millions. Billions. Wow. You guys are going to be a little underwhelmed. No.
Millions.
He sacrificed 20,000 or 22,000 cattle.
Wow.
22,000. So think about 22,000 cows. That's a lot of cows. And you know what else? He also sacrificed 120,000 sheep and goats.
Oh, wow.
That is a huge amount. So I've got a question here. If you might not be thinking that that's too big of an amount, I want a volunteer to come up who's good at counting. Okay. Come up here, Kai girl. On the back side of this 1 pound bag of rice, can you see a lot of the kernels? Okay, I want you to count all the ones you see.
You can't do that.
Yeah, you can. Why not?
There's too many.
Well, just start. Not even the ones underneath, just the ones you see.
They're too little.
They're too little. Well, let's not bump that. We don't want it to fall down again, okay? Why do you say they're too little and too many?
Because that's just the back of it. There's even more.
There are even more. So, in case you want to see this, take a look. Would you want to count that for like a math project one day?
No.
No? Would you like to count those? Okay. Rhea's going to count that. Now, here's the thing. In a 1 pound bag of rice, it's estimated that there's just about 21,700 grains.
Oh my goodness.
Based on the average weight of a grain of rice.
That's a
So,
lot.
that is a lot. Now, do you know what that means for that bag of rice?
That doesn't even
That means,
represent the oxen.
yeah, that means if you took each grain of rice out of there and you went like this, pow, and it turned into a cow, that would be about how many cows you get out of that bag, would be just about how many of the cattle were sacrificed, okay? Now, if we took that bag and we added 5 more bags to it, then you'd have about how many cattle and sheep and goats were sacrificed. Just think of that. Think of the blood and how much that was. That was so massive. Now, do you want to know what's more the sheep and stuff too? Now, here's the question that we learned from that. What does that teach us about God? What do you think? What can we possibly learn from people sacrificing so many animals and creatures to dedicate a temple for God?
He deserves our best.
Okay, so what if we just gave him 1 cow? Our very best cow. Would that be enough?
No.
Why not?
Because we can pay our debt and our sins, but Jesus can.
Okay, so here's another thing.
We can never say thank you to Jesus for dying on the cross. We cannot pay him back.
Right, we can't pay him back.
Even if we gave him all of us.
So how much do you think a cow costs?
$499.
Okay, a cow's gonna cost more than $499.
How about
If you're
a
gonna
pound?
buy like a fattened calf, that's going to be quite a bit of money. So let's just say that 1 fattened calf, let's just throw a ballpark out there because I should have looked it up, but at this point I'm guessing. Let's just say about $1,000. Okay? Or let's be conservative, say 500. Okay? So 500 would be 2 zeros. So we add 2 zeros to 22,000, and then you would multiply that by 5. So with that, you'd be in the multiple millions of dollars. And that's just the cows at a very low price. So think of the value of what Solomon was saying God is worth through that sacrifice, right? It was huge. So here's another thing. We're going to wrap up our time together by asking this question. What does this tell us about Jesus?
That he is the bestest ever.
Yeah, we see that Jesus is big, that he is worthy. And this is all stuff in the Old Testament that was to God who only connected to people in that temple. Like that's how he said, this is where you meet me. But what we see in Jesus is that Jesus is worthy of our worship. And that worship should be extravagant and costly, like the dedication of the temple. Now, I'm not asking you to go home and if you have a pet, to kill your pet or to kill your neighbor's pets and say, I'm needing it for Jesus, because that's not what he wants. But you know what we see in the Bible? What do you think is the most costly sacrifice you can give to God?
my life.
Yeah. But you know what? It's not just your life, Kai girl. It's what Ray said too. It's your heart. Because it's easy to just kind of like say, okay, I'll die for you and then that be it. But to live for him every day and to die to ourselves. Because we might say, I really want to do this. But because Jesus, you are who you are and you are worth it, I'm going to say no to me and I'm going to follow you. And that daily sacrifice shows God how much we love and honor and worship him, okay? Now, not only that, but we can also remember that because of Jesus, we don't need to go to a specific building. Like, do you guys have to come to church here to meet with Jesus?
No.
Where can you go to meet with Jesus?
Anywhere.
Like where?
Like our closets.
You could go in your closet. What might you need if you're going to meet Jesus in your closet?
Nothing, just me.
Nothing.
So you're Jesus?
No.
So what would you need to meet Jesus?
Prayer.
Okay, so yeah, you can pray to Jesus all on your own. You could also bring this in there, and you could read the very words of Jesus, right? In the Bible. And that's really awesome. And that's something that we should always remember, that we can come to him anytime in any place. So let's go to Jesus in prayer right now. Okay? So would you close your eyes and bow your heads as we pray to Jesus here today. Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all the good promises that you gave throughout your servant Moses. God, may you be with us as you were with our ancestors. May you never leave us or forsake us. May you turn our hearts to you, to walk in obedience to you, and to keep your commands and decrees and laws that you gave to our ancestors. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before you, be near to you, our God, day and night, that you may uphold the cause of your servants and the cause of your people of Israel and your followers, according to each day's need, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that you are God and there is no other. And may our hearts be fully committed to you, Jesus, to live as you decree and to obey your commands as at this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. We will see you next week. And then, guess what? We're going to have a little bit of a break. We're going to have 2 weeks off because of spring break and Easter. Okay?